I went ahead and made this a two-parter. I'm sorry. So I want to pick up where I left off, okay? So folk magic. Guys, look, one of the wonderful things about folk magic is to discover more about the area that you live in. Um, and a lot of people, now I've totally diverged from where I was talking, but I do want to talk. There is one practitioner I know of. He's very famous. I'm not gonna mention his name here. He lives in New York City, and a lot of people be like, "Well, good grief, there is nothing in New York City that is remotely magical. I mean, it's no nature in New York City. There is. It's called Central Park. But what I'm trying to say is we work with where we are. And folk magic is the definition of that. I challenge you, okay? Challenge you. Instead of going online to craft a spell and download the spell and order all the ingredients online, why don't you do this? It's just a suggestion now. Go ahead and download that spell that you want to do, but I want you to look up any ingredient that you cannot find. I want you to look up and figure out what its equivalence is. Okay, because in folk magic, a lot of things, what a person would call in one part of the country, we call something totally different in another part of the country. Years ago, I had a lady come into my shop because I did have a brick and mortar shop at one time, and she could not find this particular herb. She went to a shop, and instead of the shop, not my shop, she went to a different one. And instead of them looking up, because there are books out there that can tell you what the different folk names for certain herbs are. They just said, I don't know what that is. We never heard of it before. Anyway, she ended up going to two shops before she came to mine. And basically, what she wanted was frankincense. But in different parts of regions, they don't call it frankincense. They call it by whatever folk name they called it by. All right. So a lot of times, when you look, like my grandma's grimoire is notoriously good for this one, where you'll look up an herb and they say it in such a way that you're like, what? Well, what's that? I can't find that herb. But okay, case in point, my grandmother called High John the Conqueror root, High John Conqueror root, High John Conqueror root, and she just rolled the words together, High John Conqueror root. And I'm like, and she wrote it that way, and I'm like, what's High John Conqueror? What's High John Conqueror? High John the Conqueror root. All right. So, or some people just call it High John. You know, some people call that the court route. I've seen that too because they use High John only in court cases. Now, and that's another thing that brings up a whole new thing. How one person uses a route in one region may not be how another person uses that same route in a different region. Okay. High John the Conqueror route is usually used in some regions for court cases to ensure you're going to win that case. And that stuff works. But in other places, I've used High John, the Conqueror route, to overcome difficult situations. And it works also. So where it worked in one, I used it in a different way in another. And there are so many roots that we do this with. I remember that I clean my house with sage. And I know a Mexican witch or bruja, she does not use sage, and she has it, but in the region where she lived, everybody used Palo Santo. I'm like, Palo Santo? You mean sage? Different root, used a different way. I mean, used the same way. Palo Santo is for cleansing and protection. Sage is for cleansing and protection, mostly cleansing. I tried the Palo Santo like she suggested. She gave it to me as a gift. I love the energy of Palo Santo. I love the energy of sage. And that's the one thing I can say that has been a blessing in this technological age. We are more open to different aspects and traditions of witchcraft. So there are roots and herbs that my grandmother never used because they were not available to her when she was alive, that I am now capable of using because of the internet, and I can use them and they're all over the place. And I'm like, wow, this is great. I can use this, I can use that. And that's really cool. That's cool. But it takes away from the concept of folk magic because instead of us being so close to the earth, I think we're closer to the air because, as you know, the internet is more like air magic because we're going across, this invisible aspect called Wi Fi, connecting to a website. We don't know, we can't see it, but we're connected and we're ordering things we have never seen before on our side of the planet. You know, I, candles, figurines. When I was a little girl, my grandmother would, in her grimoire, there's semi soft wax, and you would mold it into a person. Now I can just buy a molded person in different colors. Okay. So things have changed in that one way. And what I'm trying to get across is don't be rigid with your magic. I have had people say, well, what about this candle? It didn't completely burn. And can I reuse the wax? All right. And I got to tell you, as a high school student, I was a poor, not poor, oh, couldn't afford that, oh, high school student. So a lot of times, my mom would burn candles. She didn't burn it all. I would take the used wax and reconstitute and reform the candle. And nowadays, most people would say, never reuse wax. It's bad mojo. And I say, it depends on what the old candle was used for. Case in point, if it was a hexing candle, I'd be getting rid of that wax. I am not going to be reusing a hexing candle wax. If it was a love candle, I probably would reuse it depending on what kind of love we're talking about here. If we're talking about let's get it on, no, I'm not reusing that wax because that's not love. That's lust. But if it was more like a friendship, a connection, I would have no problems reusing that wax. And I have found over the years, I've made some of my more potent candles with reusable wax. They weren't my prettiest looking candles, but I wasn't casting them for looks. I was casting them to cast a spell. And I used what I had. Okay, so now that I'm older, I still do that because, like, if I've cast a spell for communication, and most of the candle got used, I'll keep the wax because later on I might need to cast a love candle. And one of the greatest things you need in a love candle is to be able to communicate with a person. Because if you cannot communicate, you can't have affinity. And where there's no communication, there's no love. Affinity is the most important thing in creating a relationship. So I'm like, wow, I cast this for communication. I'm going to keep this leftover wax in order to, say, cast a love candle. And so I know that when I cast that love candle, communication is going to be a very important part of it. And I know that because my magical mind remembers this wax was used for communication. And I'm casting a love spell. So that means I'm also putting communication in this spell. This wax is going to help with the communication. And I've already did the energy work because it came from a past used magical candle. I always say keep positive wax, it helps. So that's one thing you can do. Now, I like to think that when you're casting on a budget, you are more inclined to be more creative and more folk with your magic. Because, honey, you can use anything in a spell that you need to get your magic done. I remember that I wanted to cast a spell so that's I could just be free of something. I needed this to be loosened, and I knew that my grandmother used to use hot peppers. Well, at the time I looked at my local shop. I'm like, wait a minute, I got peppers in my garden. I was a young kid. I had peppers in our garden. And I'm like, what can I do to facilitate pushing this harder, putting a hot foot under it, doing what I need to do to get my magic done? And I remember we had a bottle, of course everybody's got the bottle, of Tabasco sauce. And I needed my work to get done. I needed this done fast. Put a hot foot under it. So while I was um, pouring the candle, instead of buying some local hot peppers, I even used the hot peppers in my garden because I need this done fast. I put 2 shots of Tabasco sauce in the candle because I need that hot foot done fast. And a lot of people will say, well, that's unorthodox. That's uncouth. According to this book, you shouldn't have done that. We should do it this way. Mm-mm. It's not about the ingredients you use in the spell. That's part of it. The most important part of the spell is your intent. What is your intent? We lean too much on the ingredients and we forget about putting the energy work into the intent. I think that's one of the reasons why I would love to step back and do magic the way my grandma did because she didn't have colored candles. So it was all about the intention. And because it was all about the intention, everything she put in her candles mattered. Everything. Um, if she wanted to do it, when my grandma did a shut my mouth spell, now we use the oil to shut my mouth. My grandmother would literally take a sharp needle and stick it through the candle, and she would envision the needle going through somebody's lip to shut their mouth. And she would mold the candle in wax. She would melt it, she would mold it, and then stick a needle through the mouth area and talk to it. And we don't do quite that much anymore. We don't go through those intentions like that. I mean, we can, but I don't think anybody teaches it like that anymore. I mean, now when I do a shut my mouth candle, um, like my grandmother, I don't use the jar, even though I make jar candles. When I make a shut my mouth, I do a figurine, and usually I do a black figurine, okay, female or male, and I will carefully take a needle through the mouth area, and I'll start talking to the candle. And what I mean by talking to the candle, I am talking to that candle like it's the person who needs to shut their mouth. Stop spreading rumors about me. You don't even know me. Sometimes I get very heated, but I'm putting all my energy into that. And usually I'll end it with, now you shut your damn mouth, girl. You ain't gonna be talking about me like that. Uh-uh. Shut that shit down. And I'll light the candle. And as you can tell, Earthy Wise Woman is earthy with my language. All right? And you need to be, because this is your manifestation. All right? This is your magic. This is your intention. I will tell people also in folk magic, remember, the wording is of the region. So instead of being these and thous, you might use the word y'all. You might use the word you all, hayes, yous, whatever region you come from. But keep it real and keep it honest. I have never shown disrespect to deity. I have known people to speak to deity in different ways and yet show reverence, but show reverence in according to their reason. Um, I know one practitioner, she calls the Lord, instead of using Lord and Lady, like a lot of us do, she used Mama and Papa. Mama spirit, Papa spirit. And it's still showing reverence to deity, and yet she's being regional. I know some people say things, Mama got my back. My grandmother used to say, Mama got my back. Mama got my back. Mother dear, my dear. Yeah, that was a part of my mother, my grandmother's magic. My grandmother is from the South, but my maternal grandmother, it was Lord and Lady, and it was a little bit more formal, but not any less sincere. So before you start downloading spells and getting rigid about those spells and how you should do it and what you should do, go into your magical self, because it's like a friend of mine lives in the high desert. There's no grass in the high desert. I mean, there's just no grass up there. It is dirt, dirt, sand, and dirt. And whenever she's making up her altar, instead of using a green candle for the goddess, she used a brown candle. And first time I saw, I'm like, girl, what you doing using brown candles? Don't you mean green? She goes, girl, look outside. Do you see any grass out here? There's dirt. There's sand. And I'm like, oh, you're right. It's dirt and sand. And I realized, oh, yeah, she's right. It's dirt and sand. The goddess out shows herself out here in dirt and sand. So, of course, what else are you going to use but a brown candle to represent the goddess? I'd never thought of it like that, but she's right. You know, we go with our region. And the Lord and the Lady are consistent, always. They're the one consistency that we have in our world, in our universe. But they present themselves in different ways in certain areas of the world. I had an opportunity to look at things through her eyes, and I'm thinking, if I was in Alaska right now and it was snowing, and it snows a lot in Alaska, I would probably use a white candle to represent the goddess because there's snow all around me. There's snow all around me. And she's Mother Earth. So in this region, the earth is covered in snow. Why would I not represent her with a white candle? I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. We don't need to be rigid in our magic. We need to be natural. And we need to find our relationship with our magic on a personal level, not on a Google, you know, or whatever other search engine they've got out there. You download, use this candle, use that candle. Well, we need to ask ourselves, why are we using that candle? Why are we using this candle? Why? What does that candle mean to me personally? How does it represent my relationship with my magic, my relationships with my deity? How? Okay? How? It's like I know that people, when they do beauty spells or whatever, they usually call on the deity of Venus. And if not Venus, I hate when I have brain fart. Um, the Greek Aphrodite, okay? And that to them is the goddess of beauty. I get that. I get that. When I first was dealing with beauty, I found myself calling on deities like Mae West. And somebody, she's not a deity. She kind of is a deity. It's not the person, it's the energy that she carried. And I now and I found myself calling on her energy sometimes when I went to deal with things where I felt I had to be a little hard, a little stern, and yet keep my feminine wiles about me, and yet be the bitch I needed to be, which is one of the reasons why I do craft now a Mae West empowerment candle, because she empowered me. She empowered. So when I'm making this candle, I think of things that are just like hot, but feminine, like cinnamon. So I put a lot of essential cinnamon oil in that candle. I put a little bit of sugar, but a little bit of hot sauce in the candle. This is Mae West. And you know it's got to be red. Heck yeah. Talking Mae West. All right. And I make an empowerment candle. I'm listening to Mae West sing, whatever song she's singing. I'm listening to the music, making up this candle, feeling the empowerment. I ain't gonna take this shit. Yeah, Mae West, you know. And yes, this is the energy you used. That's the energy I drew upon. Okay? So that's folk magic. Now understand, you're gonna have to figure this out on your own. It's not scary to figure out. Don't be intimidated by what I'm saying when I say you're gonna have to figure out. What I'm saying is draw upon the energy that inspires you. If you got a flower outside and that flower makes you think of beauty, use that flower in the energy spell that you're using for beauty or creativity or whatever. It inspires you. Okay? If that inspires you, use it. If you look at a blade of grass and you think of money, use it for a money spell. Because it triggers that paleogram. I never can say it. Your third eye, to think money, and it's drawing in money. Use it. Use it, dag nabbit, because that inspires you to get money, and it's a great thing. A couple of years ago, I kid you not, I made this little candle. I woke up listening to Sunshine Superman. Now I don't know if anybody ever heard that song. It's a '60s song. It's a, Sunshine makes softly into my ooh, window today. That song was on my mind all day. And my God just like, you ought to make a prosperity candle. I'm like, really? And so I poured in a jelly jar a prosperity candle. Just a little nothing, didn't look like much. But I remember just singing Sunshine Superman when I was pouring that candle. And I was feeling that. That felt good. And I knew the candle wasn't for me. I didn't need prosperity in my life. I have a lot of prosperity, but somebody else might. So I poured that candle up and I sold it on my store. And lady bought it. I sold it for like $9, $9.99, I like to say. And it didn't look like much. I thought people would have said, well, it doesn't have enough pizzazz. It doesn't have enough bling. It didn't have no real bling. It was it was the color of a manila envelope. But I felt the energy in that candle. And I sold it. And later on, when somebody bought the candle, shipped it out, she wrote back and told me the moment I lit the candle, I got 2 job offers and my father gave me a car. And I'm like, damn, I knew it. I knew it when I poured that. All you guys, listen. And now, did I write that spell down? I sure did. I have a grimoire that's probably like this thick. Okay. And a lot of spells don't always end up in my book of shadows. They, you will find as a practitioner, you work out of your grimoire more than you work out of your BOS. It just happens that way because you're quickly writing down stuff all the time. And we generally have to be more formal in our writing in our book of shadows and less formal in our grimoire. I mean, I won't scratch out words in my book of shadows because I think it's sloppy. In my grimoire, girl, please. I use a 5. Okay, case in point. Hold on. This is my latest and greatest grimoire. Okay. You can see it's just a 5-star notebook. I got little sleeves there to put things in. Right in here, right in there, right in there, right in here. No real order because it's a grimoire. I like the grimoire because I can just write in it. I can journal in it. I can get recipes and put it in it, you know. And that's what I like. I currently am working on a cake recipe for hex breaking. Yeah, I'm making a hex breaking cake mix. I sure am. Writing the recipe for it as we speak. Still tweaking on it. But I'm doing it in my grimoire. So I would tell anybody, please keep one, because most folk magic is in the grimoire. I have both of my grandmother's Book of Shadows. I was blessed to get them, and I'm grateful. But the juicy stuff was in the grimoires. Mm. So now I'm rambling. Earthy Wise Woman is rambling. I'm sorry. And I probably lost half of you guys 15 minutes ago. But before you go downloading spells and going online to get your spells, talk to your guides, your inner guides. Take walks, touch the trees around you in your area, feel the energy, write down what you feel, write down what you're drawn to. Write it down. I mean, I have gotten people who have told me spells that they used with Lowry seasoning salt. And I'm like, what? She was drawn to the color, she was drawn to the scent, and she read the ingredients, and she felt compelled that this would be a good thing to put in her spell magic. And she wasn't wrong. She was right because her spell worked. If a spell works, it's right. Now, I never would have thought about Lowry seasoning salt, but that doesn't make it wrong. That just means that practitioner found what worked in her magic. Okay, because she might look at me and say, "You used, you know, Tabasco sauce because it's the hottest sauce that I know of." You know, it was, it is. I don't like a lot of hot sauce, so Tabasco sauce to me is real hot. So to put a hot foot under something, the idea of shooting 2 shots of Tabasco sauce, it didn't make sense. And voodoo is nothing but folk. Nothing but folk. I mean, there are certain things I've never seen in any other spell outside of voodoo. And that's the only place that ingredient is used. And that's fine. That's fine. Um, Years ago, yeah, I'm still rambling. I bought some bluing. Now, some of you guys are like, what the hell is bluing? Bluing? Yeah, Mrs. Stewart's bluing. But I bought it in a square. I didn't use Mrs. Stewart, I bought a square cube. And what it is, or was bluing is something that people used to use in their detergent, not in the detergent, but in their laundry to whiten their clothes. And it's blue. I mean, it's blue. So you're like, well, how the heck is that whitening your clothes? It did. All right. And it came from India originally, and people used it to whiten their clothing. We still use synthesized blue in detergents today. They still use it. But in magical work, very few people used it. It was not even considered. I bought it one time because I was at a shop. I didn't know what to do with this stuff. I was just curious, so I bought it. And I figured that over the years, I'll research it and find out what it's for and what did you do with it. I did. I have learned since. So now, what I do when I wanted to craft a spell to purify something, I might take a little bit of that bluing, crush it up, and put it in the candle that I'm crafting to purify, to make things white, clean the slate, more or less to clean the slate, because I don't think it really purifies, but it does whiten things up, brighten things up. And what I think of brighten is just, clear off some of the negativity and bring in a little bit more of the brighter things so I can see things clear. I still use it in open road spells to brighten things up, to make things more clear and white. Okay. Because they used to use that particular thing when a clergyman had to cast their do their excuse me. I'm sorry. Have a grandchild that's up. But they would use it to make their robes really white and pure. I like that concept, I do. And now that I've stopped my grandson from using his dinosaur, the important thing to remember is this: it has to speak to you. What speaks to one practitioner and that speaks to another. That does not make one wrong and the other one right. There is no hard, fast rule in this thing. Not in that work, but here's the thing. In other things, yeah, there are hard, fast rules. But what made them that way is that we as practitioners mentally came together, subconsciously came together, and said, this represents this represents that, which tells you there is a collective consciousness. There is. I don't deny that. But there's also an individual one. Find your individual one, and believe me when I say you'll connect more to the collective one. Find yourself as a solo practitioner before you step into being in a group. The group consciousness is a wonderful thing, but the solo consciousness is also very important too. You have to find a balance. It's not always easy because sometimes you may not agree with the group consciousness, but be acknowledging of it. And remember, it is important for you to connect with your area. It is important for you to connect with your region. It is important because that's where your folk magic starts. In your area, in your region. That's where your folk magic starts. So, on that note, and my coffee cup is almost empty. I ramble so much. For that, I am sorry. I will be uploading this video, and if you do want to find me, I do sell candles and herbs and oils. No, not herbs. I don't sell herbs. Let me correct myself. Don't do that. Oh, actually, I do. I am an airhead. Um, anyway, come to my shop, Earthy Wise Woman. That's one word. So I'm gonna spell it for you. EARTHYWISEWOMAN. All one word. And I'm on Etsy. And I know I should leave a link below. I'll try. I don't usually. I am not computer savvy. May I make that clear? Anyway, come to my shop. Um, but above all things, trust your own intuition. Follow your guides and walk with them. And above all, question what you see, question what you hear, but trust in what you feel. And on that note, blessings.